Well, here we are on a bank holiday Monday, not just an ordinary Monday. And of course, adding to the lack of ordinariness is Pat McCart. Pat, how are you this morning?
I'm grand, Jude. I'll give you the usual weather report. It's a bit dull and overcast. Yeah.
Is
Anyway,
it?
it's going to be quite. It should be quite a day. In Scotland, by 12 noon, I think the nominations close for the leadership of the SNP. Hey,
Oh,
by the way, you know the guy named John Swiney, Swinne. I'm
uh-huh.
betting any money has people came from Donegal about 100 years ago, and their name was Swiney.
Probably yes, when you say that. Now, I never thought of that, but I'm sure that's
Yeah.
true. Are you optimistic about the prospects for the SNP?
Yeah, well, they definitely need a new leader, and I think Hamza Yusuf was the wrong guy at the wrong time, and I don't mean that in a sort of between all the stuff that's going on between what do you call him, Nicola Sturgeon,
Yeah.
the whole thing about going on in Gaza. It was just the wrong field. He was the wrong person, the wrong place at the wrong time, and I don't mean you can read anything you like in that. I think to hit to strike a chord with the traditional voters of the SNP in Scotland, they need somebody like Swiney. He's a big hitter in the party. He's got a strong track record. He's not the most. What do you say?
Not
He's like
charismatic.
Michael Martin. He's not. He wouldn't won personality of the year, and he's not dynamic, but he's a heavy hitter. He's one of the big beasts of the party, and maybe they need a period of quiet
Yeah.
reflection to get themselves
Yeah.
back up and running.
I rest and recuperation. But boy, they
Yeah,
certainly went from heroes to zeros so quickly. I mean, there's a lesson there for Ireland. If Sinn Féin
uh,
can take it, uh, be careful
by the
what
way, did you read Tom Collins, the former editor of the Irish News, had a very good
I
column
know him
last
well.
week
Yeah.
where he said, which I thought was a very good point. He says there's a lot of lessons to be learned from the SNP for Sinn Féin,
Oh,
where
yeah.
independence, when it becomes the preserve of one party, that the independence will fall and rise on its fortunes. And he
Mm.
says that shouldn't be. Uh, in Ireland's case, he says
Uh,
basically reunification should be not the preserve of one party; it should be spread
oh,
across
yeah.
so
I
that
would
they can.
agree. I would agree, Pat. And I think that in Scotland, although the fortunes of the SNP have sunk, I gather that the desire for independence is pretty much where it always was, or not always was, but
Yeah,
has been. Uh, and again, to be fair to Sinn Féin, I seem to remember some Sinn Féin people at one stage saying, we're not saying that we're the only people who want a united Ireland, but we definitely want
yeah,
one. Others, of course, could contribute obviously as well. Um,
yeah,
I suppose it's natural to lock on to the political party that has muscle and strength and can get things done, and especially if they were in government in Scotland. But see, they had a disadvantage in Scotland, which is what's facing Richie Sunak now in England. The Tories have been in for how many? 14 years, is it? In
yeah,
Scotland, the SNP has been in government for 17 years. And people
yeah,
simply get tired of that. They say,
yeah.
give somebody else a chance now and let's see what happens.
Yeah,
Um,
but when you look at the Tories, there's been so much scandal, so much corruption, so much upheaval, and like now their latest little wheeze is Rwanda policy, and they're a nasty party. There's something not nice about them. And then
oh,
look at
yeah.
Scotland, in goes the SNP 17 years ago saying we're going to deliver independence. And
Mm.
Jude, if you can tell me independence is 1 inch nearer now than it was 17 years ago, so the
Well,
project has sort of stalled, if not,
be fair, Pat. Now, I think at the beginning of the 2014 referendum, they started, in the campaign. I think I'm right in saying that they started at 35% of the population, and the polls show them at 45% at the end. So there was progress in terms of winning some people
Yeah,
over.
but you know,
And I,
if you did a poll tomorrow morning, would it have regressed?
well, these the last person I heard talking about it was some Scots Nat guy, and he was saying
Yeah,
essentially that really wasn't much change in the desire for independence for Scotland, regardless of the
yeah,
misfortune of the SNP. I hope he's right. I really hope he's right. I think there probably would be even more if the SNP was able to smarten up and
Get his
fly
act
right.
together. Yeah.
But what can you do?
And by the way, one other point, the reason it's in my head now, just before you came
Yeah,
on air there, I was listening to the headlines in RT.
yeah.
Apparently, the Israelis have been dropping leaflets telling people to
Oh,
move
I
out of Rafah.
saw
That
that. I saw that. Oh,
yeah,
Jesus.
not
Oh,
not sick.
I
Jude,
well,
you
let's
notice what's
talk.
happened?
Let's talk about that a wee bit, Pat, because
Yeah,
I see where there's a headline in the of a piece in the Irish Times, I think, this morning saying Netanyahu rules out ending Gaza war as it would
yeah.
quotation marks leave Hamas in power. Now that well, I've two quibbles there, or just simple disagreements. I have never regarded what's happening in Gaza as a war. Never. Never.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
I really, I'm sure. I guess there are some guys in the mass who are firing rockets and firing rifles and so on. But really, it's not a war. It's a crucifixion. It's a massacre from beginning to
The
end.
massacre. Yeah, Jude, there's a group of people encamped, and the Israelis are dropping bombs on them. You can dress it up any other way. It's a massacre. That they can't get out. By the way, if a war is when the Gazans would be able to do the same on the Israelis. That's not happening.
Ah, what nonsense! What nonsense! And I see where they've closed Al Jazeera.
Yeah,
Because you know
they
they
were
are.
telling the
This is
truth.
the only democratic state in the Middle East. Remember, so they're just going
Yeah,
to close and
yeah.
bar. Sounds familiar in ways if you think
I,
about it. What they should
Jesus,
have done
they
was
closed. They
allowed Al
closed.
Jazeera to continue and not allowed to hear their voices. Get actors to say their
Yeah.
voices.
No, they said that Al Jazeera was Hamas front.
Ah,
Al Jazeera was the one we're pointing out time after time Israeli atrocities. It had got nothing to do with Hamas,
oh,
zero to do with Hamas.
of course, they can't bear that. Actually, it's very instructive. If you're watching, as I do, mainly the BBC's reporting of the war in Gaza. Sorry, I'm doing it myself. The massacre in Gaza, and then go and watch for a half hour Al Jazeera's reporting of it.
Yeah,
Serious
yeah,
differences. Serious differences. You suddenly
absolutely.
realise the extent to which the BBC has to either directly or indirectly support the government in terms of what it's.
The BBC and the Americans are sanitizing almost to the point of ridiculousness what's going on. Jude, Jude, here's the thing. There was a woman on the other day, and I've never heard it on anywhere else. She said, uh, bodies outside Al Shifa Hospital, 300 bodies were found in a mass grave. Right, that's the first thing. She says many of them were still wearing patient garbs, including having cannulas in their arms. She says there's some of them were doctors with their scrubs still on, and she said there was evidence of execution, that they'd been shot in the back of the head. Jude, have you heard that anywhere on mainstream TV? I'm
No.
going, is this true? And like this woman, I have no reason. And she was just stating it as fact. She
Yeah.
says
Yeah.
basically the Western media are covering up big time what's happened. Like
Yeah.
the fact that 300 bodies were found in the mass grave. But the other thing as well, I was watching Newsnight. I think it was Tuesday, Wednesday last week, and there's a guy on, one of their people on, and a lorry came up with something like 150 bodies. And he says when they opened the canvas, he says the smell was atrocious. Now, how long have those people had been dead? Now, that was on Newsnight.
Mm.
And now we hear this morning that they're going to attack Rafah, and where there's what about 1 million people apparently hiding. They were told to move there. A lot of them now are just exhausted. They've had no food for a long time, water, and now they're supposed to start traveling again. And did you simply go, is Netanyahu and the least bit interested in a ceasefire? I think he hoped that Hamas would turn it down. The fact that they sort of agreed to ceasefire, as I think that's a big problem for him. And now he wants to go ahead because, dude, he spent 20 years saving his own skin. I don't think
Mm.
he's that interested in the hostages. I think he's basically interested and sort of saying, right, I made such a balls up that if we kill so many people in Rafah, my own people will sort of say, look, he's redemption for me politically. I think
Mm.
it's all about saving his own skin. I think at this stage he doesn't give a shit about anybody else.
Well, I think he's saving his own skin, that's for sure. But also, I think he's working on the premise that if Israel responds with sufficient horrible slaughter, that the people of Gaza or the Palestinians in general will never ever try that trick of October the 7th again. I think that's part of it. Now he's making a big mistake. He is making a big mistake if that's what I know that's what he thinks. But it's not going to work out. Maybe not in the short term, but by God, imagine, Pat, if your family or cousins or whatever had been slaughtered the way these people are. Supposing this occupying force had, this is where my stomach almost turns. Reporters, journalists, not only is Al Jazeera banned, but many of the reporters and journalists have been killed. And then even worse than that, many, as you've said, many doctors and food aid workers, they've been killed.
Apparently there's 200 medics between nurses, doctors, occupational people, whatever the hell else. I was reading the last day, 200 have died. There's something like 160 journalists so far.
Do you think that do you think that the Israelis didn't know who they were?
Of course, Jude, they're able to drop precision bombs on so-called Hamas leaders. I presume if they're so expert, they can hardly claim a mistake when they kill a journalist. When they're claiming they have precision bombs, but it's either they have precision and know what they're doing, or they don't. See, when they kill a Hamas guy, they sort of said we know that was a surgical strike and all this sort of stuff. So the hypocrisy of saying, "Oh, we made a mistake when we killed somebody," when there's an outrage about, "Oh, that was a mistake." No, it wasn't. They knew exactly what they were doing.
Yeah, I reckon they go in and they slaughter anybody who's in the way. Even they're just crossing the road or something.
But doesn't it say something? A thing I can't get my head around, that the students in America, and a growing number, have more courage, have more morals than the politicians and the media in America. There's something seriously wrong in America. Seriously wrong with society.
There is.
Dude, even this morning, not one senior Republican, not one senior Democrat, has condemned what's happening in Gaza. You'd think, even from never mind politics, you'd think, as Jude Collins, the Republican Congressman Jude Collins, today, while still supporting Israel, said what was happening was beyond acceptable as a human being. Not one person. The only person has had out is Bernie Sanders, only senior person, and he's an independent senator, and he's Jewish. Why hasn't all the big guns, or even one of the big guns on the Republican Party, or one of the big guns on the Democratic Party, you'd think one, I mean just one, really senior person would say, "Hey, this has to stop."
Our relationship with American politicians, I think, is very complicated. I personally am very grateful when the likes of Joe Biden comes to Ireland and says, "I'm Irish and I'm not British, and good luck with everything," essentially saying, I too would like to see a united Ireland. And you have that guy, Brendan, I've forgotten the second name, but Brendan, what was he?
Brendan Boyle.
Boyle. And he seemed a terrific guy. But suddenly their voices are quelled. There's not a sound, not a peep from any of them that's positive. It's all got to do with, maybe Israel should temper their attack. God, let's not talk about it anymore, Pat. I'm likely to throw up. Right. Let's go home. Let's go across the border from where you are and talk about Lillian Senoy Barr. Now, I must admit, only about 3 weeks ago was I aware of Lillian's existence. But since then, I've been hearing quite a bit about her. Do you want to tell our viewers and listeners why Lillian Senoy Barr, originally from Kenya, is in the news?
This is going to come a massive shock to you. Lillian Senoy Barr, when she ran for election, guess who was her director of elections?
You?
Aye.
Oh!
You didn't know that,
kept that quiet. You kept that quiet.
I was her election agent, right? Here's the thing.
So Pat, tell us this. What did you have to do? What did you do, actually?
Because basically we came up with sort of policies, what was the big issues in various areas. I think it was the Foyle area she was running, I can't remember now, along that Northland Road and all that sort of stuff, and Ballymcgrody area. Anyway, bottom line is you try to identify issues of local interest. There was a lot of there were some big housing estates there. There was some, there was a lack of facilities and so on.
How do you go about finding out about those things, Pat?
Well, you sort of go and chat to people, what's the big issue here and all the rest of it.
These be
You
people
go
that you know, or will it be people you would just
people
not?
that you know, and you go chatting to people and you do a wee bit of
Mm.
canvassing, and then
Yeah,
you'd issue a statement and all
yeah,
that. Now, Jude, here's the funny thing. I remember talking to a certain person in Derry that was quite well known, and when I told him I was Lillian, right? Lillian came to Derry. She married a guy called Paul Barr. I
mm,
think she met Paul. Paul, I think, worked with maybe some sort of charity organization or something
yeah,
out in Kenya, and the two of them met there, and she came back.
mm,
Lillian is a very, very able person, and so
mm,
on. And she set up this Northwest Migrants Forum. She said when she came, she knew nothing. There was nobody to help her,
mm,
and it's all this thing about what you need to do. How you set yourself up with healthcare and social
yeah,
welfare and housing and all the other,
mm,
and get your
mm,
kids into school. So it was a very good thing she set up. Anyway, so here's the point that I'm getting to. When she was running for office, like she is, as you can imagine, she has no family, there's no Dohertys or McLaughlins here. There's not a lot of seniors running around. And
Has
I
she
remember
any
when
children?
I was
Has she
chatting,
any children?
I should one child,
Mm,
yeah, one child. But anyway, when she was running for election, I remember being told, look, she'll be lucky to get 100 votes. But you should have seen the way Lillian she went round every house, she went round them nearly twice. She was in, and she got 600 votes, for a first off election. And anyway, it was such an impressive thing. She run against Sinn Féin and all the rest of it.
mhm, mhm.
And I can't remember what somebody resigned or something, and then Lillian was co-opted, and she's been pretty impressive. So now she's been offered the job as mayor of Derry and Strabane.
And who
But there's
voted
a
for that?
quite a
Who
bit of
voted for that? Is that the councillors that vote for that?
but see, here's the thing. There's a lot of controversy about it within the SDLP. What happened was there's a girl called Shauna Cusack who's been a councillor for about I think 11 or 12 years,
Yeah,
and there's a guy called Jason Barr from Strabane who was also
uh,
in the running. And
yeah,
apparently they were supposed to be a meeting. I think it was last Monday night where they were supposed to put their sell their wares to the 300 voters and
yeah.
all the rest of it. Yeah. What happened was that was all curtailed, and the management committee of the SDLP said there would be no meeting. It wasn't postponed, it was cancelled, and
Why?
that only
Why?
Lillian Sinai.
Ah,
That's the point. They said there had been some sort of a hedge school interview earlier, and apparently the management committee were so impressed with Lillian that they said we don't need a vote. Uh, and so they had made the decision, and that Lillian was going forward as
mm,
the
mm,
SDLP candidate. Now,
mhm.
Shauna Cusack said she has nothing against Lillian. She thinks she'll be a fabulous mayor
Yeah.
and so on. But she says, I am not putting up with this. She says there's supposed to be a democratic process. She
Yeah.
says, being denied even the opportunity to put your name forward
Mm,
to the 300 members, and in such a way, that your freedoms. And she says, I didn't join the SDLP to be treated like this.
mm.
And her and Jason Barr issued a statement saying that the whole democratic process or the whole democratic ethos of the SDLP has been thrown into a
Uh,
spanner.
would you agree with them? Would you
I do,
agree?
yeah, because
Yeah.
yeah, because if you're going to,
Would Pat, if there had been an election, if there had been, it's not election though, is it? Isn't it this
well,
interview process?
it's a selection rather than an election, if you know what I
So
mean.
who does the selecting?
Well, I think I think the 300 voters can sort of make their views known. What the exact procedure is, Jude, it's very unclear. In fact,
Mm.
I noticed a thing from the SDLP the other day, just reading it, says they're going to sort of clarify
Oh,
the whole election thing and the coming years. I think it's a bit late in the day now because they
uh,
have lost two. I think Jude, there's 9 SDLP councillors on the 40-seat
mhm.
Derry and Strabane council. They have lost two. It is not a good look for the
Aye,
SDLP at
aye.
all.
Now, not good news when you have, I think, when you have a group of people within a party choosing who's going to be the leader. I think Sinn Féin to some extent suffered from that in terms of Gerry Adams and so on. And I know the one person who stood against Michelle O'Neill was, what's his name
John
from
O'Dowd.
Lurgan? Yeah, John
John
O'Dowd.
O'Dowd.
But that was kept quite low key. It's a hard one to call because let's face it, the people who are most active, most interested in the welfare of the SDLP or any other political party are probably the best judge of who would be the person to come in. On the other hand,
Yeah.
if you're going to have a party that's going to have real support and really represent the views of people, it does seem to me that the people in the party in general should be given the say so, a vote
Yeah.
as to who goes through.
Yeah.
But could I widen this out for a second, Pat? I find this very interesting. I watched her last night, and she is very articulate. She looks very
Yeah.
well, very glamorous, very glamorous.
Yeah.
Secondly, she is very articulate, and she knows how to handle
Yeah.
awkward questions even as well as
Absolutely.
good questions. So I take my hat off to her for that. In ways, I was thinking it's kind of like Obama. I was really glad to see Obama win in the States as a black man, the first black
Yeah.
person to be president of the United States. Terrific. I think a lot of assumptions were made in the back of it that there'd be, oh, geez, there'd be a great rise in the number of black people who were represented in different positions in the States, or that there'd be a fall in the number of black people in poverty, or there'd be a fall in the number of black people in prison. Forget it. Forget it. It has
Yeah.
nothing to do with that. And I tend to say the same thing with Lillian Senoy Barr. It's good that she has got this position of power, and it could be inspiring for youngsters who would see her as a role model, or who might be from Africa or India or whatever. There's another part of me, though, that says, as with Obama, in an odd way, aren't we being a bit racist talking about the first thing that's talked about when you read the thing about Lillian Senoy Barr is she was from Kenya, and she's going to be the first. We're focusing on her race. We really should be focusing on her
Yeah, but you,
abilities.
no, I don't buy. No, Jude, I don't buy that as an argument. In fact, I don't buy it at all. No, I'll tell you why, Jude. We have had a very settled, homogenous population.
That's
The
true.
Troubles kept nearly every.
Yeah.
Jesus, Jude. I remember a tourist in Derry in the 19 when I was editor of the Derry Journal. I saw more hen's teeth than I did tourists. And
Yeah.
we have
Okay.
had no traction. We've had no track record, whatever,
Okay.
of people from outside coming in
Okay.
here and going into. And Lillian is the reason of the whole thing, that she's black, that she's Kenyan, that she's different. That is what the whole issue is. Her name is not Doherty. It's not McLaughlin. She's not none of the track record. She's this Maasai Kenyan woman, as you said, very glamorous, very different. And it's like somebody ignoring the elephant in the room by sort of saying, "Oh, wait a minute, she's different, but let's not mention that."
Well, could you not do both? I just think there is a tendency.
Richard, she's a woman of serious ability. Don't get anywhere.
I
she's
detect that.
She's not getting a position because out of tokenism.
I did detect that she is. I mean, she's no mean operator. And I wouldn't like to be in opposition to her because I think she'd probably devour me. So yeah, that's good. I still think I think her color of her skin is a major factor here in the way it's being reported.
Can I run across you again? See, one of the claims made, and I think it's now. By the way, I should put on the record, she's got serious abuse on social media.
She said death threats even.
From right-wing quarters.
I believe that, and that's a shameful thing.
It's disgusting, absolutely disgusting. But one of the claims made by some of the people who were, and I have to say, some of the people who were smearing her, was this is virtue signaling by the SDLP. We're putting in and you see, right, Jude, no way immigration has become an issue and so on. And I think one of the claims was Lillian has been put forward by the SDLP sort of to show their liberal credentials as being a very whatever.
Well, I would say that wasn't totally absent from the thinking. I would have thought that to be an element
either.
Yeah.
But it was a political calculation. Everybody, political parties put forward things on the basis of saying, "Oh, people will like that."
Yes.
A lot of people who vote SDLP would like the fact that they're a liberal ethos, and they'll put forward a black woman to be mayor of Derry instead.
Yeah. I think it's an education for many people, including myself, to see an immigrant woman with such poise and such clarity and such ability to articulate her ideas and to handle questions. I find her very impressive. I don't know what it called.
Where was that on? By the way, I didn't see. I don't even.
I think it was on. I think it was on Carruthers, Sunday Politics.
I missed that yesterday. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that. I think that's what it was. She got a good long interview. Yeah.
I think the whole thing, Jude, is it was such a positive thing for the SDLP to put forward this black woman, that the way they handled it has taken a bit of the shine off it.
Yeah. Well, that lurking in the background, and that was raised by Carruthers. The loss of two councillors, bloody stupid. Of course, anytime you put somebody into the party who is relatively new to it, a lot of the old timers are saying, or guys who have, borne the heat of the day, are saying, well, what about me? It's the same
Yeah,
everywhere. In schools, somebody gets a post of head
yeah.
of department. That's because he's been there for 25 years, or maybe he's just a really bright guy and he's only been there 5 years, and the guy who was there for 25 years is really bucking mad,
Uh,
So,
there was a guy called Jim Quinn. He was head of, I think it was Steelstown, if I remember correctly. And then way back in about 1980 something, there was a big controversy about some teacher got a job and so on.
yeah,
And I remember Jim Quinn came down to the office, and he made one of the statement I've never forgot. He says, Pat, he says, see if 20 people go for a job and one person gets it. He says there's going to be 19 others saying it was a fix.
very true.
So
Very
he says,
true.
and he says, no matter who, and by the way, Jim Quinn was also a very serious union man. So he was the principal of the school, if I remember correctly. But the
Yeah.
point he was making, he says, Pat, if one person gets the job, those who don't get it are going to say, oh, well, wait a minute, hey, he knew the board of director, chairman, and his wife was such and so on, all that crap.
Yeah. Yeah. As the blessed Roy Keane said, show me a good loser and I'll show you a loser.
Hey, by the way, Jude Roy was asked to name the best manager of Manchester United, and he said Ron Atkinson.
You're kidding. Did he really? Oh, he must have had a mad falling
Jesus,
out.
give us a
Well,
break.
Ferguson said that he was the best player he'd ever trained, ever
Uh,
sort of handled. So
uh,
he wasn't going to return the compliment. He was probably just
no,
being trying to be, trying to
no.
be
Well, what do you call it? Sure, he
controversial.
hates Ferguson these days.
Does
Anyway,
he? Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Well,
yeah,
there's a lot of he's an easy sort of a man to hate, you know. Uh,
yeah.
unlike, for example, Pep Guardiola. Pep Guardiola always
Uh,
strikes me as a very stylish figure, very
uh,
alive, and he's always gracious in defeat. I've never seen him not being gracious
uh,
in defeat.
no, he said we didn't deserve to win.
Yeah, and then
My
he goes,
favorite. Now we've digressed on this. I think Klopp. I think I'm going to miss Klopp someone terrible.
"Ah,
I think
yeah, so am
you know.
I, so am I, so am I."
He's his values are match my values. I think what he stands for are is pretty decent.
Yeah, he's very involved with the community, I gather, and
Yeah,
seeing to it that all the
yeah,
players in Liverpool were the same way. Uh, I think talking about taking the shine off, I think Mo Salah took the shine off his exit really with that
yeah.
display of petulance.
We tantrum.
You'd like to think
Uh,
that all the players would have felt warmly towards him and really felt
and now we're totally digression. What did you make of Cliftonville winning the cup after what was it, 50 years when
Did
they
they win?
defeated Linfield on Saturday?
Did they win it?
Yeah,
I
that's
didn't
how
even
much it
know there
meant to
was
you.
I didn't even know there was a cup final. The last time I was interested in the Irish League, Pat, was when I was
Uh,
about 16, 15, or maybe younger
uh,
even, when Derry City
yeah,
was playing Glentour in the cup final. And they played
uh,
3 times, I think. And I think Derry
uh,
City eventually won. I think Jobby Crossan was playing for them then, was he?
uh, I think, by the way, there was I'm open to correction this. Remember, there was a Danny Hale played for what do you call it for Derry City. Danny Hale. I saw the young fella Hale played for Cliftonville. I presume he's probably could be Danny Hale's grandson.
Uh-huh.
Anyway,
Well,
that's
so who did they beat?
Linfield 3-1.
Oh, oh, I shouldn't be so
Suddenly
pleased.
things have improved.
I shouldn't be so pleased. Yeah, yeah. Have you ever talked, Pat, by the way, we were talking there about Lillian, Sinoy Bar and so on. Have you ever talked to people in the IFA about sectarianism within the IFA or within the Northern Ireland team?
No, no, I've never had the honor.
Well, I did it about 25, 30 years ago. I never heard such rubbish. I mean, I knew little about it, but I knew that this guy was trying to do a snow job. He was essentially saying, "Oh, I used to be a problem, but not now. We've got so and so in power. And he's really working." You know.
Uh,
Meanwhile, back at the
Absolutely.
ranch, it's F the Pope and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
Okay. Significant. Again, in the Irish Times this morning. I will just talk about this briefly because it's kind of a wide story. Significant minority of Irish people believe in conspiracy theories, according to research. Things like they believe that there's a conspiracy about a secret world government. Many of them believe that the scientists are deceiving the public, and that there are experiments being carried out on people without their knowledge. And that there's a secret group of people who are responsible for making all the major decisions in the world. 10% of people believe that's definitely the case about those secret group of people making decisions, and 24% think, well, yeah, probably is, you know. What's your own feeling? Do you think there's a vast conspiracy of people out there?
No, absolute bollocks, Jude. You know, like they're Jude. When I watch, see, if you get 4 or 5 Irish people together, you'll probably get 4 or 5 different views. You know, that's you know, and when you see what's happening in the world today, you know, Russia wants to go one way, China wants to go another way. Uh, the students in America are rising up against the establishment. The what do you call it? That Trump has taken the Republicans way to the right. Joe Biden doesn't know whether the shit shares or shaves. What do you call it? And if anybody can tell me that there's one group pulling all the strings and so on, and that Jude, you know, I think you'd have an easier job guarding mice at a crossroads than trying to put all this sort of stuff. Jude, I think it's a complete and utter
Really,
bollocks, to
but
tell you the truth.
well, you know, I think there's a little scintilla of truth in it. Like
Well,
it
there
says,
probably is, but
here's the quotation: "A small secret group of people is responsible for making all major decisions in world politics." Let me cite my own experience. I've never been in world politics, but in the institution I worked in, decisions and that was made always by a small group of people. And sometimes
yeah.
those decisions were made before we would have a meeting where we were supposed to decide as a group, as a democratic group.
I've been involved in things like that, yeah.
So, I mean, if it obtains at the local level, maybe there might be something about it. And again, if you think about
Right,
it,
see, like, let's not revert to gas again, but you can bet your life Joe Biden rings Macron and he rings Schultz in Germany and all the rest of it, and they all sing from the same to
yeah,
try and give
yeah.
each other a cup. Doubt that happens, but that's not a conspiracy theory. That's sort of a pragmatism to
Well,
sort
these
of,
guys,
you know,
now this is the exact wording. A small secret group of people is responsible for making all major decisions in world politics. I think in one sense that's true, as you've just cited. Joe Biden checks with Macron, checks with the German guy, checks with Australia, checks with Canada. You know, there is and that's part of the problem actually with, that's part of the reason we have Trump. Because people feel, you know, the guys are going to make decisions and there's nothing I can do about it, you know?
yeah,
And so
yeah, yeah. But
I
Jude,
think there's an
but
element of truth in it.
why not, Jude? You know, I think that right at various times, various people's interests will coalesce, and they say it's in our interest and all the rest of it. But there'll be some other time they could be ringing the Chinese and you know, the Brazilian, you know, what is the BRICS countries? They've all got together now. They're so fed up with the
Mm.
same group of people. You know, the Americans and the Australians and the Brits and the Germans and the French.
Mm.
Now, what the Brazilians and the Indians and the Chinese have got together and sort of saying, look, we're fed up with that. So, Jude, there's always counterbalance and all that. Jude, that's not to say, look, that there's certain, don't buy for a second. Big corporations have banded together in the past to nearly force through things that suit their interests.
Yeah.
And I know some of the protests about capital gains tax and all that. Their business people have got together and so on. But I think if you get 10 people in a room, usually you'll find maybe 10 different opinions. I find it very hard to believe that we can all be sort of taken down the path that a certain we select group make us all dance like, you know, marionettes.
Well, the other side of that same statement, I think, is ask yourself, what degree of power do I have over what's happening at the state level or internationally? And I would say I have zero, virtually zero. The nearest thing you or I have, of course, you're director of elections, so probably you've got more, but but you know, you get to go every 5 years or 4 years and put a ballot in, and that's it.
Yeah.
That's it. You
Yeah.
don't have
But,
any other
but
control. And most people
surely
feel that.
that's self-evident. Like,
I know, but
our power
you
is,
gotta acknowledge it, you know. A lot of people
I
don't.
know. I'm not saying we have a lot of power and all the rest, but we
A lot
have
of
one
power,
thing:
we've
we've
none
got a
at
vote.
all. We've none at
Yeah,
all.
yeah, but no, but okay, I'll take it. Even I agree with that. But the point is, like, how you know, what is it? Churchill, not often agree with anything with Churchill said. but he said democracy was the least worst system. He didn't say it was the best system. Jude, you know, and like look at everywhere you look. Uh, uh, Somebody like Harris, what Simon Harris, like I am singularly unimpressed with him. Yeah, he's our teacher, but
Yeah,
right, the
yeah.
alternative is we could vote for other people. You know,
That's
but
true.
the reality is, say again.
I was going to say, what should be happening is that people at school and in their homes should be taught, look, when you grow up, part of your job is to look after your family and the people
Yeah,
you love. But another part of your duty is to be a functioning, active citizen. So, you
yeah,
know, if there's decisions made about a new housing estate, you're involved in that. You have a say in that. You are able to listen to arguments and make up your mind. But 99% of people don't bother because it's never taught. Here we are saying, oh, democracy is very important. We never mention it in schools, much
yeah.
less
But you
practice it.
remember,
Much less
remember
practice
Trump?
it. What
Trump said
democracy is in
Trump.
any school?
Yeah, right. Trump said thanks be to God. He said some years ago he said thanks be to God for stupid people. And Britain, 4.4 million people used to buy the Sun.
Yeah.
And what are those people like? As long as there were boobs on page three, and they could read about the football and what was on Coronation Street that night, did they give a monkeys about what Thatcher was doing in Argentina or what, or
Yeah.
the Falklands, or
Yeah.
the Las Malvinas, as you call them, or whatever? And you know, it's all distraction. And you know, the celebrity Big Brother, and you know, whatever other one was on, and you know, the biggest selling paper didn't really do with politics. It was all distraction, distraction. Who was it that said, Jude, you know, we can discuss all these things as long as it's on the confines or the paradigm,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah. Noam
the
Chomsky.
power.
Yeah. Noam
No
Chomsky.
Chauncey. Jude,
Yeah.
that's always struck me as true. Look at Jeremy Corbyn. He tried to change the paradigm by saying, wait a minute, hey, I would not push the button that the big business is conning people. 83% of all power and wealth is within the hands of a select few, you know, and there's 60 million people here. Let's change it. See what
That's
happened.
That's exactly my point, that when somebody
Yeah.
like a man of principle, a man who seems to me to be honest, comes on the political scene, very easily he can be taken down and people will shrug their shoulders and say, okay. That seems to be shocking. I really do believe that the principles, you should be taught you're not doing good. You're a bad person if you're not actively involved in politics at the local level and maybe even at the national level as well.
Yeah.
That's my Monday bank holiday sermon just about finished now, Pat.
Yeah.
So, Pat,
Uh,
tot up the hours that you spent getting this what will I call it? This SDLP stooge where you can pull the levers of power.
what do you call it?
How
Jude,
long did you spend on
I haven't seen Lillian in about a year, so I'm not too much involved anymore.
Okay, Pat.
And on that note,
Okay.
good luck, Jude.
All the
Good
best.
luck. Bye.
Okay.